If you saw my last video on Conestoga College, you would have seen that I unpacked how the college is so dependent on international students, but also that its president has received just a massive pay increase and just a lot of weird things are happening at Conestoga. But so many of you have told me that, Christopher, this is not unique to Conestoga College. This is a fact of the college sector as a whole in Canada, that colleges are so dependent on international students just to survive. So I decided to look at two well-known colleges, Seneca Polytechnic and Sheridan College. Both are extremely well-known. They accept tens of thousands of students every year. And I wanted to know if, in fact, these colleges follow a similar business model as Conestoga. Are they just so dependent on international students? Well, what I found was truly shocking. Turns out Conestoga is not an anomaly. So let's get into it. First, let's start with Seneca. Seneca received approximately $109 million from the government of Ontario through government grant. Now, that seems like a lot, and it is. $109 million is a lot of money, but not in comparison to tuition revenue. Tuition revenue as of 2024 is $432 million. Now, I'm just going to pause there for a second. For every dollar that the government provides Seneca College, $4 is provided by students through tuition fees. It makes me wonder if, in fact, these are public colleges anymore, or if it's like a hedge fund business that relies solely on students and more particularly international students. Because you'll see in this graph that domestic students pay on average like $3,600, and it's relatively flat. That small line at the very bottom is domestic's tuition revenue. And then that blue line is international tuition revenue, which represents just the lion's share of all tuition revenue to Seneca. So very similar to Conestoga, they are highly dependent on international students for tuition. But there's a hidden fee I wanted to bring to your attention because I couldn't find this and I think I know what it is. So what I'm about to share with you, again, is my opinion. It's not in any way, shape, or form on Seneca's website or any of its documents. But if you look at the 23-24 financial statements of Seneca College, you'll see under the operating expenses that in 2023, this was about $118 million, but by 2024, this jumped to $135 million, representing a $16.6 million increase. What could this possibly be? I thought for a second maybe there's like a loan they took out and they had to pay interest on it, or maybe there's like a new building they did and there's like capital maintenance, whatever, and I couldn't find anything. So what I'm about to share with you, again, is my opinion, and I need to make that explicitly clear. This is just my opinion. So in order to attract international students, it's been reported that colleges rely on agents that operate in these countries, and that these agents make a commission for every student that they attract to a specific college. This commission is approximately anywhere from 15 to 20% of first-year tuition. And again, there's no official reports on this. These are just unofficial numbers that others have reported on. So it got me thinking, if we assume that an agent is making 15% and we assume that the first year tuition is $15,000, an agent is going to be receiving approximately $2,250 for every student. So what changed from 23 to 24? Well, Seneca accepted approximately 11,000 international students. Now, I can only imagine that not every single student required an agent to get into Seneca. So if we assume that 7,500 of the 11,000 required an agent, that would equate to approximately $16.875 million in agent fees that Seneca paid. That's a lot of money. And I can understand why Seneca doesn't want that on their operating expenses as a separate line item, because that would probably make headlines in newspapers. But again, it's just my opinion. Something else happened in Seneca during this time. They've also increased the payments to their administration and executive administration. The president's salary rose from $400,000 in 2020 to over $450,000 by 2024, representing a $59,000 increase. Similarly, the VPs at Seneca have also seen increases in their salary as well. So while the president of Seneca is not making what the president of Conestoga College is making, his salary has increased quite dramatically. In total, salary increases represent 15% over this 4-year period, which outpaces inflation by a wide margin. So with the influx of international students, we see tens of millions of dollars being paid on agents. Again, my opinion, we see a lot more money spent on salaries and benefits of its executives, which paints a picture of how sustainable is this business model that Seneca is relying on. So let's now pivot to Sheridan College. But before we do, folks, please like, share, and subscribe. My name is Christopher Balkaran, and I really do believe this is the place where we as Canadians can have open and honest conversations about the issues that are affecting us that we're kind of scared asking about. And I feel like I have the ability to research and get into the numbers and weeds so that we can have a more informed conversation to our politicians and to each other moving forward. So if you're liking this content, like, share, and subscribe, and definitely leave a comment below. I'm always trying to get better. So Sheridan follows a very similar model to Seneca and Conestoga in that they rely very heavily on international students. Domestic students represent approximately $50-ish million of tuition revenue, while international students represent $142 million, a 2.5x over domestic students. But again, similar to Seneca, I went through their financial reports. Yes, I went through their financial reports, and I noticed that under supplies and services, there was an increase of approximately $25 million. At the same time, Sheridan accepted way more international students. And again, both colleges, I would probably go through more colleges. I doubt that these colleges would ever have a line item about the agent fees that they pay agents abroad, because again, it would look so bad on the college to show that they're spending tens of millions of dollars. But when I look at their supplies and services, I find that there's a $25 million increase. And again, similar to Seneca, no real explanation. So my assumption, and again, it is only my assumption, is that perhaps the large majority of this 25 million is being used as agent fees to get more international students to Sheridan. But Sheridan has done something different than other colleges that actually might send greater warning shots. And that is in November 2024, just over a year ago, probably anticipating caps on international student fees with the election of Mark Carney, Sheridan actually has reduced programs. Over 40 programs have been cut, $34 million have been cut. I mean, just massive cuts to the college. And that to me signals how risky their business model is. Because if Sheridan is cutting $34 million just to survive, what's going to happen if the feds make even more aggressive numbers on caps to international students? So if we just zoom out for a second, the idea that these colleges are publicly funded is a misnomer. They're not. They're almost 100% funded by international students and the international student tuition fees. Now, I'm not hating the player, I'm not hating the game here, but what I am thinking is that, okay, you've got this sudden influx of cash. Why not invest that money into better campuses, better student experiences, smaller classroom sizes, better professors, etc.? Why not put that money aside for sustainability in the event that there are further reductions on international students? But what we see instead are tens of millions of dollars being spent on agents. Again, my assumption, more money being spent on salaries and benefits of executives, and also massive cuts that Sheridan College is undertaking. And all of this leaves me with way more questions than answers. Question 1. In 2026, Ontario's Auditor General is set to release its report on the international student program. My assumption is they're going to find a lot of anomalies, way more than I've found, and this may lead the federal government to further reduce the number of international students. Can colleges actually survive if there's a 40 or 50% cut in international students? Probably not, right? Question number 2, do international students actually end up employed in the fields in which they studied? I mean, think about it. If you're an international student and you're paying $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 a year, my assumption is your expectations are that you would be gainfully employed at the end of your tenure. I don't know if that's the case, and I think more research needs to be done, which leads me into question number 3. If international students recognize that they're paying exorbitant fees, that it's not going to the student experience, but to the administration, and that they're not getting employed in their fields, or there's a less likelihood that that's the case, will Canada still be attractive for international students to want to come here and study? And so while the federal government may put caps on international students, maybe we'll see a reduction in the number of international students wanting to apply and come to Canada. And what will that mean for the entire college sector in all of Canada? Because when the deficits start hitting, it's not going to be international students or domestic students footing the bill. It's going to be you and me. The taxpayer is going to foot the bill for all of these colleges who played with house money and now find themselves on the other side of their risky business model. Where's the accountability? And that should be the number one question Canadians should be asked. If you're liking my content, hit that like button, definitely subscribe, and let me know what you'd like me to explore next. I'm always here looking with genuine curiosity about the issues that are affecting Canada and Canadians. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you in the next one.